Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to CRM Science Incubator Weekly. I'm your host, Sean Harrison. It's good to see you again. My esteemed guest today, Mars Hall, the customer-facing architect, if I'm not mistaken, with Heroku. Welcome.
Thank you.
Say hi to everybody.
To be here. Hello, folks.
So, customer-facing architect. What does that mean? Does that the negative? Does that mean you have architects like in a hole somewhere that you don't let talk to anybody? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, yes. Primarily at a product company like Salesforce, most of the architects are going to be people very more senior software developers that are designing the systems and how they fit together, and so as a customer-facing architect, I'm part of Salesforce platform. I produce, you could think of it as references for how to apply our platform. One of them, of course, being machine learning. Like, how would I, as a user of Heroku, run a machine learning application? And so instead of directly building product, I build essentially in the more open source realm where we share this technology.
Right, and that is your claim to fame. That's been your life lately, which is Prediction.io on the Heroku platform.
Yeah.
Right, and you recently became an official member of the Apache group, right?
I did. I joined as a committer, so
congratulations.
Thank you. I've been merging some big changes and fixes recently.
That is, from a tech perspective, tech nerdy perspective, that is pretty damn cool. So does that give you more influence on the direction of the Apache project, or how does that?
Yeah, so really what Apache does for open source projects is create a sustainable, they kind of ensure a sustainable process around the development and life cycle in the community around a piece of software so that it can be trusted by companies, by people, that they're not just going to, like whatever, npm install something and then it's never touched by the developer again. Apache is an organization that's about creating that kind of rigor around the open source projects. You can trust them, and there's ongoing, there's a real focus on continuing to get new members and keep the community growing and turning over. So basically by using Prediction.io on Heroku, you're using open source software and running it on our platform. And
on the Heroku platform.
Yeah, much like you might run a Ruby on Rails app on our platform, or a Django app, or write an API to serve a mobile app in Node, or any of those kinds of things.
So let's set the context for those who aren't familiar with Prediction.io necessarily. So the big message this year is Einstein. Einstein being the marketing term for the AI features and functions that are becoming available in the Salesforce space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that takes several forms, right? And in some cases, maybe this is your experience because you've been working with the incubator participants now,
mm-hmm.
In communication with them for 3 months. One of the first questions they had is, what is Einstein, right? And to me now, having tried to tease it out, and you can tell me how wrong I am, but to me now, Einstein means a lot of very different things. On the one hand, you have internally, Salesforce has an AI layer now, a proprietary AI layer that they're surfacing as features within specific cloud products.
Mm-hmm.
So opportunity scoring is the most popular one that people reference.
Right.
But there's half a dozen in Sales Cloud at least, and many others that are being slated for release. Okay, great. So then you have these new features. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, then you have the MetaMind folks. They're doing some APIs specifically around natural language processing and image analysis.
Yes.
Awesome.
They're like the research division.
They're the research division.
Yeah.
Okay. But then I thought you were kind of saying you're a research person too, right? Because you're looking at Prediction.io, and that's more of a completely open. Here's this package. Tell us about that and how it fits with the Einstein Universe. You know what I mean?
So building software, trying to apply software to solve your own business problems, it ranges this gamut from clicks, no code, very declarative. This is what Salesforce is really all about, is enabling people to build customized workflows and softwares and applications for their businesses without having to understand code. And so a lot of what Einstein is applying machine learning in ways behind the scenes so that as a user of a customer of Salesforce, you get all of this additional artificial intelligence layered in without having to know how to write any of it, right? But as with all declarative systems like that, there's an edge where you're constrained in what it was designed to do. And there's only so much that a piece of software can be made to do at a time.
That's true.
And so the question is then, oh, so I've got all this data coming in from, I don't know, maybe you're a Kickstarter and you make some IoT product, that measures like moisture level in soil, and you want to be able to relay that across the internet and manage your customers with Salesforce. But with all that data is there's no Einstein feature that will help you take care of all that IoT data today. So there's IoT Cloud, and that offers some very specific machine learning Einstein features.
Yep.
But then it may be that you actually need to write your custom maybe mobile app, iOS app, that helps your user be able to manage that in a really compelling way. And so you start breaking off into, how do I make something this custom? And so Prediction.io fits in at that point where it's like you need to just kind of pony up and say, okay, we've got to have developers, some programmers, some data scientists that understand how to take the data that comes from our custom sources, applies the kind of algorithms and learning on it that in itself is, a huge.
Right, that's one level on its
level.
own, the type of data it is and how best to apply machine learning.
Right, to solve a problem,
Yeah.
right? And then there's the question of how you run that software in a trustworthy way in production, in a way that a business can rely on it. And so this is where, data science tends to be a lot of like, oh, well, we'll write some, Python stuff to do analyses, and it's great, you can do a lot. But then when it comes to kind of conventions for how to deploy that in a way that it operates reliably with an understood life cycle, and that you can have engineers and operators drop in, and that's what you need to make trustworthy software.
Wow.
And so that's where the Heroku part comes in. So the idea is that with Prediction.io, you're given this framework to write a custom machine learning application, and then it's operationalized on Heroku. So you don't have to make all these decisions about, what types of servers you're going to use. Are you going to host them yourself? How are you going to network and protect things? There's still a point that you have to do custom work, but it helps lift that challenge out of machine learning. Instead, you get this operational experience, the developer experience of Heroku.
Oh, very good. And do you feel like now that you've been here at the incubator for several months, have people started to kind of pick up on that and kind of understand how that fits as they try to think about how to solve their business problems?
It's a really challenging space, because the probably some of the hottest job talent today is around data science, is around finding people that understand the mathematics and the theory and the rigor of the science, because it's not like building an interface where it's you can just see, is this what I want?
Yeah.
Instead, you not only have to, I would say, hopefully write your software to do what you want, but you have to have the rigor to evaluate it, to test it, to ensure and understand that it is providing the kinds of answers and that it doesn't have biases that are going to be problematic for your business. And that part, it's that's a whole new kind of realm of programming that our very web-oriented internet world is not familiar with so much. So Prediction.io rides in this kind of intersection between folks that are going to be applying algorithms directly, like figuring out how to clean and transform data, and the intersection with folks that understand how to, in this case, deploy like a web-based app on Heroku. And so, it's been slow going. A lot of folks have picked up on it, but I feel like in a lot of cases, people like the one at the incubator that said, "Oh yeah, we're doing some custom ML."
Yes.
I asked, "Oh, okay, yeah. So are you using Prediction.io?" No, we're using Python scripts, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, well that's great. So I think that mostly just speaks to the fact that there's so much to solve just at that level of it, at the data science level, that getting to the point of saying we need to invest in the operations of this, it's not quite there yet. It's more like, yeah.
To provide a easier to use framework and environment so that these things aren't as custom fit from the beginning to end. Is that the kind of
Yeah.
or?
I mean, I make the perhaps crude parallel of this to Ruby on Rails.
Okay, yeah.
And if you're not familiar with Ruby on Rails, it pretty much changed the face of building web applications a little over 10 years ago. It came on the scene and really enabled startups to just create prototypes, basically,
Right.
which of course would become like their actual business and then fall over. So Ruby on Rails has been known for some performance issues too.
But that's the story of any software, right? It's going to have your pros, your cons. There's a life cycle. Sure.
But the whole idea there was that Ruby on Rails was this, and still is. It's still an amazing framework that's like growing and has more features being added. But it's like it makes all these decisions for you.
Very opinionated.
It's opinionated.
It's official stance, right? We're an opinionated framework.
But if you learn those opinions and you appreciate those opinions for helping you avoid doing that work, so in the sense just trusting that it's like, oh, I don't need to worry about how to make a query interface to my machine learning model. Like Prediction.io does that.
Right.
I don't need to worry about like figuring out where am I going to train my model and how am I going to get it to my web processes. Like Prediction.io gives you this whole workflow. And it's written in Scala, and so is Spark, which is the distributed data processing framework that it uses, and machine learning libraries with all these different algorithms built in. It's kind of like this standard library of machine learning, really, the Spark ML libs. You get all of this. It's kind of like all these choices have been made, and you can override a few functions in Scala and connect your data, and you have like, it's working. The engine is running.
Gotcha.
But that's where it's like, oh, well, if it's really just about connecting the data and writing those few lines of code, that actually is what you have to focus on, and that's the data science part of it.
Right.
So, and that's the part that it's like, once again, it's just so early still in the popularization of data science and how we build these kinds of applications.
Well, it is very early, and that's certainly been the experience of the incubator participants, is trying to understand how do I get even oriented with all the different options, right? So okay, so quiz then. I'm a system architect. I've been given a project, and I'm in an elevator with you, and I look at you and I say, how should I think about Prediction.io? How does it fit for my toolbox? What kind of problems is it solving for me versus the other side? How should I think about it?
Well, first of all, it's probably not the only application you're going to run.
Okay.
And so you might want to think about it in terms of, when I make choices about how I operate my machine learning system, part of my business, how can I minimize the operational complexity for everyone that has to touch technology at my company? And so a great choice there is that you're interested in using something like Heroku. Prediction.io also works really well directly on Amazon Web Services. And then there's also Docker images and some Docker Compose to like get whole systems running. So there's a lot of different options to help you kind of stand on the shoulders of folks that have already solved some of these operational questions. So realistically, if you're doing anything more than an experiment, it's worth considering that as one bullet point. Also, how big is your data going to be? Like realistically, if you have a few million customers and you want to analyze like their accounts and behavior,
Okay.
that really doesn't take a lot of compute power. It doesn't require a cluster of things necessarily. But if you're doing
The challenge
something,
is more getting the algorithm right and making sure it's beneficial versus managing scale.
Huge scale. And so, of course, if you are expecting to have to manage huge scale, like you're scaling up to do an IoT product, and you know you're going to have all these devices that you sell that need to connect at all times of the day, and it needs to be available, or your customers are going to be missing historic data. And so at that point, it's like that scale of data is really beyond anything that is just like drop in. But the scale of data, and so I would almost always say start small. Like even if you expect it to get really big, one of the advantages with Prediction.io is that you can prototype things and know that you have a path towards
do a proof of concept and with it. So either on Heroku, or I guess you could even do it on your local machine.
Oh yeah, definitely. Always develop on your local machine. That is a crucial part of this whole experience. Whether you're doing Python or Scala, it's like you gotta figure out how to load it on your machine so you can debug it easily and load small data sets and do experiments. You want to be able to iterate quickly, not wait hours for like batches to run or something.
Fantastic. Good friend of mine who's a MVP, Salesforce MVP, Paul Battison, asked me to touch base with you, and he's just kind of curious, since Predictions I was on Heroku, can it be anywhere else? Well, you've answered that question because it's an Apache project, right? So you can use it wherever.
Yeah. If just whatever, search for it on the internet, Apache Prediction.io, and there's various deployments that are available. The Heroku option is one.
Now, will there be any kind of linkage between that framework in Heroku and what's going to be in that space that might be surfaced in Apex on the main platform?
That's an interesting question. I mean, Prediction.io is primarily, its main purpose is to make a REST web service to get predictions in real time, to query in real time. So you could think of it like basically it's like sorry, I got lost in my own thought.
It's okay. We were talking about how you surface, would you surface that in Apex? And you were saying, really the architecture is create this web service, this REST web service that you can access in real time.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So the integration with Apex is like many other external services. It's going to be through a JSON REST interface. And you can probably also do that directly through Lightning, as long as you deploy the Lightning component framework. As long as your Prediction.io server allows cross-origin requests, which is another little web thing to figure out.
We'll manage that part.
But yeah, if you're doing it directly from Apex, cross-origin isn't an issue. Otherwise, really the more interesting integration questions are around data. Because it's like, the whole idea with Salesforce and all of our different clouds is that you have this kind of unified set of data that you can interoperate with. And so how does Prediction.io become a contributor to that as a first-class citizen? And today we're mostly doing stuff with Heroku Connect, which is a product that lets you essentially synchronize Salesforce objects into a Postgres database, a Heroku Postgres
It's
database.
really nice. I've worked on some projects with Heroku Connect.
Yeah, and as long as it's a synchronization system, so it's not real time. Depending on the load and traffic, it can be a minute to an hour to have something sync. If you're running batches of stuff, like we do batch predictions for some projects, and those batches will inject hundreds of thousands of records into the Postgres database, and it takes a while then for it to synchronize all that across to Salesforce. But that's all custom software. You write scripts with we love SQL. SQL is like lingua franca of data, really, and and so those are the two main ways: JSON REST interface and Heroku Connect.
Very good, very good. Well, Mars Hall, I think we're about out of time, but I sure appreciate you stopping in today.
Well, I hope that this has answered some questions for folks, and feel free to reach out to me at Marzi, M-A-R-S-I, on Twitter.
M-A-R-S-I on Twitter.
Yes.
We'll do so.
Thanks Sean.
Mars Hall. Take care. That's it. Next week, I think we have another guest from Einstein. Marco, how do you pronounce his name?
I don't know, Marco.
Yeah, you do. He's the I'm making a fool of myself. But it's a good one, and I'll figure it out. I just forgotten. And it was